Hey guys, Rich here from the RCNetwork.com, and today it's going to be a little bit different video. This will be a long video, and we're going to be building the brand new Tekno EB48.4. That is their 1/8 scale four-wheel drive buggy. Now, with that, this is a video that is going to give someone maybe new to the hobby or someone that is getting into RC. Maybe it's their first kit. It's going to give them some good information to get building a kit and not be afraid of doing so. So with that, we're going to be building the EB48.4. We're going to be taking it from going from a box to the finished product. Now, make yourself very comfortable. Put this video on while you're wrenching on your own vehicle. It'll give you some inspiration, and hey, why not wrench together? Well guys, stay tuned and check this out. Alright, so I'm about ready to start building the new Tekno RC EB48.4. Decided I'd throw a camera on and, maybe someone will enjoy watching this. I don't think that I'll be teaching Ryan Lutz how to build a car, but maybe for those maybe just getting into building a kit or just RC in general, this may give you some pretty cool tips to, get your RC on and maybe do some wrenching, or maybe teach you a couple tips or tricks I do to make my kits a little bit better than the average kit. So I just did the unboxing and I kind of laid everything out here, and what I like to do first off is everything has bag I, bag E. I just put it out in letter order just to keep my sanity, especially when it's late at night. So if I could find the A bag, that would definitely help here. So A, B, let's see here, C. It's like we're building diffs first. The D bag, yeah, that's the D bag. E, new top plate there it looks like, or wing mount. God, I need to go back and learn my alphabet. There you go. G, H, I, and J. So pretty much we have them all in numerical order, and that's the nice thing about Tekno kits is, you open bag A and everything you need is in that bag. You don't have to go hunting through a parts bag, or even worse, like a hardware bag to, find a particular screw, or I hate the plastic bags that some of these companies give. It's just this big mongoloid set of bags. Like if anyone's built a Team Durango kit, you know what I mean. So right here, I got all the oils and stuff. I use their oils, but I don't like to use thread lock, just the run-of-the-mill thread lock. I use the actual team associated one. I just love this stuff. I bought like 3 bottles of it, so I'm set for at least a month or so. Nah, probably longer than that. So, but I like to use this just because it's just what I use. So I have a few tools that I've kind of gathered up to start building. Right here is a few things that I always use. MIP drivers, some of the best drivers out there. This is an AKA double drive. This goes from 5.5 to 7, just in case. I like 1 or 2 tools in one. A good hobby knife. This is J Concepts' new little hobby knife there. A silver Sharpie, which I like to mark my diffs with what oil I put in it initially. Sometimes I forget or I change it and don't know. Tekno shock shaft pliers, and then finally the 17 mil. This actually helps building the shocks for Teknos, and also when you're putting on the 17 millimeter hubs, you can stick a screwdriver through this little access hole, which is pretty nice. So, but it's time to start getting our build on. So bag A, we're going to start building diffs, and I like to go ahead and set out a paper towel just so I don't spill anything on my work surface right here. This is also where I shoot videos, so I like to keep this all kind of nice and neat. So as I'm starting to cut bags open right here, I like to go ahead and take these bags, and I have the open box over here. You can kind of see it. Actually, these are the paper towels, but there's a box over here from the original EB48.4 box. I throw all those bags in there, whether they're empty or not. Late at night when you're building and you're just pulling parts out and you're on like bag, Z, things get away from you. You can miss an O-ring, you can miss whatever you're missing, and Thank you, Jason Snyder, for giving me that tip. I use it to this day. So, good old short course world guy, raw speed RC guy. So, we're going to go ahead and spill out all of these items onto here. And I've already kind of pre-read the manual, and I know Technokits pretty well, so I'm pretty well versed in how they lay things out, but always pre-read things. I mean, it means a lot to the person that wrote this, that you're actually reading some of these things that they have on here. You can see right here, apply grease to the outer groove, things like that. They put it there for a reason. Follow the directions. Don't be that kid on Christmas and you forget to do everything that the owner's manual said. So a couple tools I forgot to mention. A good set of needle nose. I mean, I use these things a lot, especially trying to put the pin all the way down into the differential cup. It's nice to have those. And then I do use power drivers especially for 8th scale. I know that their plastics are a little bit tougher, and it just helps the wrists over time to drive in some of those screws, especially into fresh plastic. So I definitely use those. And so building diffs, I never put the spider on the top. I usually set the spider into the fluid and then align this onto the top. So just my way of building differentials. So Technos are just so nice. I mean, I always forget how nice it is to build Techno differentials. The MT410 had the same ones. My EB48.3 as well. So no shims, no recalculations. I mean, it's just a good solid differential, and they're large. I mean, these things are pretty large in comparison, especially if you've done anything 10th scale wise. So, but let's go ahead and drop this in here, and I always like to give it a test spin to make sure everything spins nice, and hopefully you guys can see this in here. Oh, look at that. Oh, it's nice and smooth. It's just butter. So, very nice. So, last but not least, it is calling for center diff, what fluid? I didn't even take my own advice and read the fluid. It says 10,000, so got the 10,000 right here. And let's go ahead and glob this in here. Of course, 10,000 is going to be a little bit thicker than the average 7,000. And you can kind of see it just mishmashing on there. I like to go ahead and set this one up because I believe the other two are going to use 7,000. That's going to go on a little bit easier. So we'll let this sit and breathe a while so it gets all into the crevices of that differential. And then since we have this thing ready, got my silver Sharpie right here. I'm just going to go ahead and mark on here 10. I just go right here. Just like that, just to give it a marking on there so I know what was in there the last time I used it. So, and we'll go start building our rears and front. Once again, bags into the box so we don't lose anything. You hear that? That's some solid, hard machined steel that they put in there. No pot metal, no sintered stuff. It's just good old American hardened steel. So laying all this on the paper towel now, there's lots of bits and pieces, especially from two differentials now. You can see how they put like an oil inside of here too to keep the hardened steel from rusting, I guess. So that's all in there. Oh, look at the bag of spiders. Ah, nice. Alright, so went ahead and got all of the diffs built. I mean, there's 10,000 right there. That's the center diff. I actually made a mistake earlier. The front is 10,000 as well, and went ahead and marked an F right there for front and 10. As you're assembling it, you'll know why. And then last one is rear and 7 right there for 7,000 weight in the rear. Now the manual says 1 millimeter below the top as the fill. Just letting some of these bubbles get out right now. So moving this thing around just a little bit just to let oil into little crevices. So, and just to get a perfect fill. After that, we're ready to start assembling, and like I said with the power driver, it is good to use these things. I have it set all the way to 2 right there on my clutch, just so I don't burn through plastic. And then I go ahead and I tighten it 97% down. It's a feeling thing. And then I go ahead and use my MIP driver to finish it off. Ready to start assembling. Everything's filled up perfectly. So let me go ahead and drop just the rear right here. Drop this on in. Let this sink right into there, into the gear mesh. And we're going to go ahead and take this one. Doesn't matter which one we take here. And I have this thing oriented towards like right like that. And then you can go ahead and turn this until you see the holes. These are nice because the holes go all the way through the differential, which is nice. We'll go ahead and take the MIP driver and finish these home. There, just like half a turn on each one. And we'll know if we're successful by this thing spinning pretty freely and no clicking noises and that kind of stuff. And you kind of see here that we have a little bit of flashing here. So we can go ahead and chop that off, just so it doesn't get kicked up inside of the differential case. We don't want that. Although it's only plastic, probably won't do a lot of damage, but nonetheless. Alright, so getting into the differentials now, and Techno actually gives you shims for the differentials in case you need them. Now, in my case, I noticed no side-to-side movement whatsoever. This thing spins very freely. I mean, there's nothing binding on this at all, and so I don't feel I need any shims. So now it's time to go ahead and grease up the ring and pinion right there with some black grease that's supplied with the kit, and I just do a small little bead all along the ring right here. You don't need a lot. You need just enough to coat everything. And I just go around to where it's all coated, give it a quick spin, and that's all you need for the differential. Now time to go ahead and seal this all up. Now I did notice that there was a little bit of flashing left over. The kit parts actually come pre-cut, so they're cut off the trees. I went ahead and just scraped off the excess flashing, and just to give a nice clean finish to this kit. So now time to go ahead and drop in some of the screws, and we're ready to go after that. And then just orientation of the shock tower. Gosh, look at this thing. This thing is beautiful. It's a work of art. CNC machine. You can really tell quality when you have it in front of you. No stamped aluminum here. And I'm going to go ahead and drive a few more screws into the shock tower. There we go. Front differential bulkhead is all done. I'm going to give it a quick spin, make sure everything's free, and we're all good. So getting into the wing mount here, and you almost need like an engineering degree to understand all of this here, but they do note the stock position, which is number 2 and forward low. So once you read through this, it took me a few minutes just to kind of refresh my memory on how to position the wing. So there's, 4 different settings and 2 to 3 different downforce settings, which is pretty cool, especially if you happen to be in an outdoor track. You can kind of set it for more downforce if you need to. So this is going to be indoor, so we're going to go with the stock one. I also pulled up Matt Wolter had some setup sheets actually for a track that I run at, so I'm going to be following that a little bit, and I'll be notating that in the manual just with a Sharpie, just to make note of any changes I make other than the stock settings, which is always nice. That's why I really use the owner's manual as kind of like a working book. Don't be afraid to write in these. It's okay. So just going to go ahead and start screwing this thing all together so we can get the wing all mounted up now. There we go, wing mount's all done and ready to mount to the rear bulkhead. Alright, so back at the EB48.4 build, actually referencing one of the setup sheets that Matt Wolter posted on Facebook for an indoor track, which plan to range sit at OCRC. So just kind of going off of their setup compared to the stock setup, and it looks to be pretty close to the stock setup. So going to see where else it's tweaked, but the C and D block are basically the same as the stock setup. Got the rear bulkhead, front bulkhead, center diff, and then these are all the pills right here. So these pills go into the C and D block, which is nice that they're including all of these different options. So if you happen to race outdoors, indoors, wherever you want to race, you pretty much got the setup in this one box. So it's pretty cool. A lot of kits offer that these days. I know there's been kits in the past. I think my B5M, I had to purchase the C and D pills, and the pills were different, which was weird because the C pills were different than the D pills, which didn't make sense. But anyways, these are all the same for both the front and the rear. So a whole set of front ones, I believe, will be coming in this packet, or maybe a future one. I'll have to check, or these may be all of them for the rest of them. That could be. It's been a little while since I built the EB platform, so let's go ahead and start getting this going. We're going with the sway bar setup now. Now I got a set of calipers. This is another thing that anyone should have if you're building a kit. It gives a particular measurement right here between the two collars, and I've noticed that if you just go ahead and set this up right there and then put the collars on either side, you can set it up to the exact measurement you need instead of trying to eyeball where the bend is and everything. So that's the way I do it. So these are nicely marked right here with the millimeter that they are. I'm not sure if that's going to pick it up. Yeah, that kind of does. Nice. So anyways, going to go ahead and start setting this thing up. Alright, so starting on the arms now, and of course hinge pins go right inside like this, and to free them completely up, I like to go ahead and ream the arms. Just standard arm reamer. This is an EDS 4.0 millimeter arm reamer for the Techno, and it goes in quite nicely and just barely shaves out some of the material to just make the pin right on there so smooth. So that's what you definitely want, is a very free suspension to let the shocks do all of the work. So that's where we're at right now with these arm reamer. You can kind of see little flakes all hitting the work surface there. and go and give a little test fit. Ah, buttery smooth. So we want the arms to completely fall down. So it can be a little bit tight at first, only because you're going to obviously wear this, but I like to have them flow freeing on the first lap. So go ahead and do that to all of the points. I believe the inner one is going to be a little bit different size. I'll have to grab another size of arm reamer, but for right now we're just dealing with the fronts, or the item that goes up to the bulkhead. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one too. Nice. Alright, so rear bulk is all done. Got the mud guards on there, the sway bars all connected. Looking nice and good. You can see just the CNC machine work right there on the C and D blocks. Very nice, same as the kind of stealthiness of the shock tower. So that's all done. Now time to work on the front. As I thought I was actually starting on the front, I am now assembling the rear universals. So went ahead and got some of the stuff unpacked, and like I mentioned earlier, what's really nice about this 17mm hex is you can put this on here, hold this down, and then tighten that set screw inside of there without having to get like a wrench or anything. So same wheel wrench offers a dual feature. Also holds the shock cap later on when we build the shock. So pretty nice little feature from that. And another nice thing on these is the universal shaft. So no more CVDs, or I forget what that actually stands for, but these tend to be a little bit more durable, and in the lifetime of the vehicle will last longer and just more consistent throughout the suspension roll. So these should be a nice little upgrade here. Go nice and tight. Perfect. All right, on to mounting these things up, and I will show you guys how I build my turnbuckles. All right, so we're building the rear camber links now, and to be honest, building turnbuckles is my probably least favorite thing to do, but if you have the right tools, it's pretty easy. It's just the comprehension fact of where the left-handed side threads are versus the right, and where you kind of put everything, and how you land at this 38.5 spacing. So a couple of things that I like to have: a good set of calipers. I already have this set at 38.5. It's locked down, so it's not going to move. I use these two Techno turnbuckle wrenches. Now, one side is 4 and 5mm. The other one is 5.5 and 7. It's lots of uses for other things too, but it builds the Techno turnbuckles perfectly, because right here is a 4mm and right here is a 7mm, so you can pretty much turn them on without an issue. Other thing is good old chapstick. I think someone asked me about this on a picture I posted on Instagram, but I use chapstick to build my turnbuckles because it doesn't break down the plastic in the rod end. So good little alternative item. Everyone has one laying around the house. Grab an old one that may be expired. That's what I do, and that's why you can kind of see this one's been used quite a bit here. So pretty much all you do is you notate the notch right there. This notates the normal threads, and that always goes to the left side of the car. All I do is I always start with that, just because I'm religious about how I build it. So go ahead and notch some of this stuff onto the threads to act as a lubricant. And before we do that, another key thing is these things. This is a ball in and ball out wrench as well. So what I like to do is go ahead and install the ball ends into the rod ends, and it's easy as this. Right there, line that up, done. Make sure it's all wiggly, and you're set. So nice little item about this Techno shock shaft plier is they have not only the ball in, ball out, You have a couple of hexes right there, and then of course it is a shock shaft plier, so it does a lot of features. I love this tool because it does more than one thing, so it gets it perfect every single time. Now if you wanted to remove those, this goes right inside of here, notch it, and you remove the ball. So pretty cool. So now that we have those on, time to get wrenching. Now the hardest part is getting this thing started, and you know, a lot of times it starts crooked, and that's okay. Once you get the first couple of threads on, then you can go ahead and even it out if you need to, just by little wiggles. So right there you can kind of see that it is crooked, and just by moving it that way and just checking the angles, you're pretty much set. So right there. And then what I do is I go ahead and turn these all the way on. So you've threaded the plastic all the way, and then we're going to go ahead and back off to the size that we need. Some people do this on the car. I think it puts a little bit too much pressure on certain points, especially if you're building 10 scale. 8 scale, I mean, the components are pretty stout, so you can probably get away with it, but I like to go ahead and kind of dry or lay the pipe, so to speak, on these threads on the plastics just to make sure they're set. So I've already built one of these, so I kind of know about how much I need to go on this. And right about there is the ballpark. So now we're going to go and do the other side. Now that was the left-handed thread side. Now this is going to be the right-handed. So now we're going to be tightening the opposite way that it normally happens, just to get it started. And then we check for the pitch of it. That one actually landed pretty good. And we can go ahead and lay this on. And then once I get about halfway, I just double check to make sure that this thing is on straight, and this one started to veer a little bit. I've actually had a rod end before come out the side of the actual turnbuckle, so you have to be careful because, you know, threading onto plastic, it's pretty soft. I think that was an RPM rod end at one point, so and they use really soft plastics, or flexible plastics I should say. Alright, so we've laid all of the thread. Now we're going to back this one off to the desired length and then check it with the calipers. And then just making sure that your orientation is always the same. So this is nice. Techno gives you an actual size. So you can use this if you don't have calipers, but I like to get the preciseness of calipers. So 38.5. This one's just a little bit wide, so we're just going to tighten it down just a little bit. You can always do this on the car once you get everything set up. I like to just do it now to be done with it. So I'm going to notate the right-handed thread and go ahead and tighten this down just a little bit. Right there. And notate the left-handed thread now and tighten this up to match. There we go. That should match up to a perfect 38.5, which it does. Perfect. Now I just need to bolt these things onto the rear bulkhead. Alright, so got the front clip all done. Turnbuckles, got the new spindles with the bearing right on there, which is pretty cool. Actually bearings inside of either side of the spindle. So got all of the front clip done. Pretty much the same as the rear. Didn't want to kind of repeat all of that stuff. And now starting on to the belt cranks and the whole steering assembly. So went ahead and assembled, you know, basically your old school type of servo saver. And it's just funny over the years, you know, it used to be like a hidden tip to put Loctite on here. Now it even says it in the manual to go ahead and put thread lock on the barrel to close that down. So another helpful tip is to use a 17mm wheel hub hex and tighten this thing down. So they say to tighten it all the way down and then back it off 3 full turns. So just gonna follow the instructions on this one. I went ahead and applied Loctite to about where this large nut is going to ride on to the barrel, and then it's a matter of putting in the 15 different bearings into the system. So this thing rides on all bearings, I mean pretty much on all points of this steering assembly. There we go, backed off 3 full turns, and we're ready to get this thing going. Alright, so now we have the chassis plate out of the bag, about ready to start bolting this stuff to the chassis now. So went ahead and got the entire steering assembly all buttoned up now, so it's all pretty much onto the unit, but I've left everything kind of loose because these are keyed posts down here, so they need to key into the actual chassis plate. So left all that loose for right now until I get it onto the chassis, and then we'll just go ahead and start tightening everything up. So make sure and use Loctite, especially on those posts, because they are aluminum. There we go. Now ready to bolt the rest of the front bulkhead to the chassis now, and we'll be good. And just like with anything, I always do kind of like a star pattern on any time where there's a kind of box type of unit. So just gives a more precise landing of everything, so that when you get the diagonals lined up, you're pretty much sure to have everything else line up perfectly. Alright, there we have it. Those are all done now. Now we're ready to get on the rear clip and a couple of braces, and we'll start mounting the center diff after that. Alright, well there you have it. Front clip, center diff, rear clip all on with all the drive shafts. Everything is very, very smooth on this Techno buggy. Really nice build overall. So just have to put the side guards on. Right now it says to build the shocks, but I'm going to postpone shocks till the very end of the build. So going to put the rest of the side guards on, mount the servo, get that stuff going, and then that'll be a wrap for this build. Alright, so one of the last things that I like to do is build shocks, and this is kind of why I've cleaned off my entire area right here and have basically organized somewhat of my system. Now, this isn't the exact assembly instructions for the shocks, but I have everything separated out in bags, so every bag that came out is a certain section, and that's just part of my OCD-ness. And I got all of the fronts right here, all of the rears with the corresponding oils. I got my shock tools right here, which these will play a huge part in building these shocks. I use these ProTech RC O-ring grease. I mean, you can use green slime. This just comes in a larger quantity, which I like because I use quite a bit of it with all of the different shocks that I build. And then I got my hardware separated between rear and front, just the same order as how I build these things. So, and then as far as the owner's manual, it's good to note the assembly instructions, lots of information in here, so pre-read this before you start building. And then the filling instructions. Techno actually does a very good job of giving you specific filling instructions, and their stock setup now is building emulsion shocks. So should be a fun experience, and I'm going to start building right now. Alright, so I've already built 3 shocks and want to show you guys how I build shocks. So in no means is this the absolute correct way. This is the way that I build them. I found that it makes perfect sense and it actually works out for me. So with that statement, let's go ahead and start building. So the first thing they want us to do is to go ahead and fill the bottom of the shock body with all of the cartridges, is kind of what I call them. So it's just a matter of assembling it on in And I like to use a 2mm wrench to go ahead and shove those things in, just making sure that they're perfectly seated. I found that the 2mm size is basically the perfect size to do it. So once that's in, we go ahead and take our O-ring. Lots of that blue grease that goes inside of there. Once again, seating this all the way in. Then we have a center kind of washer that goes in as well. And every step of this, you just want to make sure that everything is centered on in. There's no backed up items in there. So, and then once again, last O-ring, lots of grease, and just I like to kind of smear the grease all around inside of there to make sure that it is getting fully covered. Now the last bit of this portion is placing this on. And I forgot about the O-ring. So the O-ring, you basically, on all of the black O-rings, I like to go ahead and use the silicone oil that comes with the kit. I just dab a little bit out onto the bench here, get a nice coating of it. I know it's kind of off camera over here on the other side, but once that is done, go ahead and stretch this on over the threads. This whole part is going to be messy, so I like to have a shop rag, and I have that thing right here at the base. I just wipe my hands off on it. So once that's on, go ahead and put the bottom cap on. And you want to make sure that this is not binding on the O-ring at all, and that it's making a perfect seal, which this is. Looking all the way around. And the nice thing about the Techno shock shaft pliers is they have a 12mm hex right there, and that actually fits perfectly on there just to give it a snug fit. So that's the shock body. Now it's time to assemble the shock shaft. So right here, once again, shock shaft pliers. Always use these things. You don't want to mar up the finish of the shock shaft. Piston, and some have a directional. These are completely flat. These are machined Delrin. So I know that like some of the team associated ones, they actually have the markings like 1.6. I usually take like a Sharpie to fill that in so I can see what it is that's in there. The nut goes on, and I'm going to use an old school wrench for this one, a 5mm. That's what this is. This is the $300 Tamiya wrench, if you guys know what that is. It costs $300 for a Tamiya kit, and you get this wrench for free. So, and then as far as tightening the piston down, you want it to spin, but you don't want it to rock. So right there is a perfect, it's spinning around, but it doesn't have any play, so that's perfect right there. That's done. So now we need to go ahead and put the shock shaft into the shock body. So I like to take a little bit more of that O-ring grease, smear that around. That's going to also act as a lubricant to put on the rod end later. So, but like to always coat this up, especially the bottom of the shock shaft, just so that when it's going through the O-rings, it's getting a good coating and it's not tearing up those O-rings. These are very sharp threads, and you don't want to do that. So, and I like to just kind of rock it back and forth once it's through. Quick tip is I usually take this amount of O-ring grease that's left over, put it on the next one, but since I've already built them, I won't need that. This goes through, and you just want to make sure that everything is nice and slippery. So no binding in the cartridge area, and that everything is good. So that portion is done. We can go ahead and take our little hand-built or home-built shock stand, set that on in there. Now it's time to go ahead and put on the shock boot. This goes on like this. And we're going to go ahead and stretch the boot over that bottom cartridge cap. Sometimes this is pretty tricky on some, but the Techno makes it pretty easy. There we go. And once again, we're going to take the shock shaft pliers out. Before I forget, let's put on the collar right here. Got the collar all set up. We're going to grab the O-ring for that. Once again, the silicone oil. Go ahead and put this inside of the shock collar. And you just want to make sure it's fully seated in there and that it's fully oiled up. So once again, the rag comes in handy down there at the bottom of the screen. And this thing, what I've noticed is that you have to give it a kind of a push to get past the O-ring and onto the threads. You can backtrack the threads to make sure you're lined up so you don't cross thread them. And then I usually like to move this about 3/4 way up the shock body, which may take a little while in camera time right now. So let's speed it up. There we go. So 3/4 ways up, and it's looking good right there. So we're going to go ahead and take the shock shaft pliers now. Go ahead and clamp onto that. Grab our rod end. There's that. And once again, rod end. Go ahead and put this in here. And we can snap that right on in. There we go. All built, ready to fill up with some oil. So filling the shocks, I'm basically going to follow their instructions. I already done 3 of them, and they worked out pretty well. So first thing you got to do, and this is an emulsion style of shocks, so they say to go ahead and fill up the shock body in its entirety with the shock oil that's supplied. In this case, I believe it's 450 for the rear one that I'm doing. And we got it all the way to the top. Now they're saying to go ahead and move the shock shaft in 3 to 5 times and then screw the cap on. So no actual getting the air out. They want the air in these because it's a blend of oil and air that make them so smooth. So there we go. There we got about 3 to 5 times. I'm going to go ahead and screw the cap on. And keep in mind, this is definitely not a traditional bladder style of install. Although these can be done a multitude of ways. You can see the vent hole right there is starting to bleed, but this is the main vent hole right up here. So I'm just going to wipe off the excess oil. Now they're saying to go ahead and move the shock shaft all the way up to bleed out of the main bleed hole right here. And we'll see a little bit of oil just creeping out of there. Oil and a few bubbles. So we're going to wipe that off as good as we can. Then we're going to take our screw with the little gasket on it. Screw that on in there. Not too tight. Want to make sure it's just sealed. And then they're saying to pump it up and down 30 times vigorously. So that'll actually mix the oil and the air in there and become kind of like a, I guess like a salad dressing, you could say. Alright, there we go. That's about 30. Now it says to go ahead and take the bleed screw back out. I'm going to go ahead and dry it off just to make sure I have a good seal at the end. And then we're going to go ahead and push this all the way back up. We should see a fair amount of oil now come out of it, oil and air. Dry this off. And then we can put the bleed screw back in for the final time. And there we have it. Perfectly bled emulsion style shock from Techno. So now it's a matter of just putting on the spring, the boot right here, or the perch. And these are nice because they're actually locking, so they actually have a grub screw that goes in the perch at the bottom here to lock it in so you don't lose any perches out on the track. There we go. Perfectly good shock. Oh, that's smooth. Alright, gonna get this mounted up on the the buggy and call this a wrap. Alright, well that's a wrap. Got the EB48.4 all fully assembled now. Hopefully you guys have made it to the end of this video. It was very lengthy, but hopefully you guys found a little bit of good information in it. It's been a blast making this video and also editing it. I think it's hitting around close to 50 minutes, which has easily been my longest video to date. So, but really close up, here's a look at the EB48.4. Very nice. I mean, they've done a lot of subtle changes and really surprising. I mean, when they originally announced this vehicle, I was kind of shocked at just the amount of small changes they made, but when you really sum them all up, they made some pretty good changes. So, well guys, that is it. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this very long video. Maybe I made some good background noise while you wrench on your vehicle as well. I've had a blast making it, and I'm off to the next one. Well, that's it for now, guys. If you have any comments or questions about this video, please feel free to leave it on down below. And as always, thumbs up and subscribe. That's it for now, guys. Over and out.